Let's get right into it. Number 10. Dancing Plague. Picture this. You're walking through a medieval town, minding your own business, and suddenly half the street is aggressively breakdancing like their lives depend on it. No music. No festival. Just people convulsing, spinning, and hopping until they collapse from exhaustion. This isn't a deleted scene from a fantasy movie. This actually happened in Europe, most famously in Strasbourg in 1518, and nobody ever fully figured out why. It started with one woman. She stepped into the street and just started dancing. Hours passed. Then days. Her feet were probably screaming for mercy, but her brain had clearly unionized against her body. Soon, dozens of people joined in. Then hundreds. Some danced until their hearts gave out. Others danced until they dropped unconscious. Doctors at the time looked at this situation and thought, yes, more dancing will fix this, because medicine was basically vibes and guesswork back then. Theories have been flying around for centuries. One idea is ergot poisoning, basically moldy rye bread that turns your brain into a malfunctioning carnival ride. Another explanation is mass psychogenic illness, which is science speak for stress spread like gossip. These people were living through famine, disease, religious terror, and general medieval misery. When one person snapped, the pressure cooker popped, and suddenly the whole town was doing involuntary cardio. Your brain is extremely social. It mirrors, it copies, it syncs. That's why yawns are contagious and why you suddenly want to cry when someone else does. Now crank that mechanism up to 11, sprinkle in fear, starvation, and superstition, and congratulations, you've got a dance epidemic. No virus required. The wild part? Similar outbreaks popped up across Europe for hundreds of years. Different towns, same chaos, same baffled historians. Eventually, they just stopped happening. No cure. No explanation. It's like humanity collectively decided to uninstall the randomly dance to death feature. Basically, your nervous system can stage a flash mob when life gets too overwhelming. Number 9. Laughing sickness. You know how laughter is supposed to be contagious? This is that, but turned into a psychological horror story. In 1962, in what is now Tanzania, a few schoolgirls started laughing. Not giggling. Not chuckling. Full-on, uncontrollable laughter that wouldn't stop. Minutes turned into hours. Hours turned into days. Eventually, the school had to shut down because everyone was laughing too hard to function. Then it spread. Other schools. Villages. Entire communities caught the giggles from hell. Some people laughed until they cried. Others laughed until they passed out. Some experienced panic, rashes, fainting, or screaming fits in between laugh attacks. This went on for months. Imagine explaining to your boss that you can't come to work because your town has a laughter epidemic. Once again, doctors ran tests. No toxins. No infections. No weird fungi. Nothing. The best explanation? Mass psychogenic illness. These students were under intense pressure, strict schools, cultural upheaval, and the stress of rapid social change after independence. Their brains basically hit the emergency exit button and chose laughter as the release valve. Your brain hates being trapped. When emotions don't have a socially acceptable way out, they sneak out through the vents. Sometimes that looks like crying. Sometimes fainting. And sometimes it looks like laughing until your stomach hurts and your reality collapses. The laughter wasn't joy, it was a glitch. The scariest part is how believable it is. You've laughed at inappropriate times. Funerals. Serious meetings. Silent rooms where laughter would absolutely ruin your life. That's your brain misfiring under pressure. Now multiply that by an entire community, and suddenly laughter stops being funny. It becomes a warning sign that your emotional operating system is overheating. Basically, your brain can weaponize joy when it runs out of healthier coping strategies. Number 8. Koro Panic. Imagine waking up one morning absolutely convinced that your genitals are shrinking and might disappear entirely. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. Physically vanishing. That's Koro, a psychological epidemic that has swept through parts of Asia and Africa multiple times, leaving panic, chaos, and a lot of very tense conversations behind. People experiencing Koro are genuinely terrified that their bodies are collapsing inward. Men fear their penis is retracting into their abdomen. Women fear their breasts or vulva are shrinking. Some sufferers tie strings, clamps, or even household objects to themselves in a desperate attempt to stop the retraction. Spoiler alert, gravity is not the problem here. Medically, there's no shrinkage. No anatomical change. Nothing is actually happening, except in the brain. Koro is strongly linked to anxiety, cultural beliefs about the body, and intense fear of death. Once one person panics publicly, others start checking themselves. And once you start checking, every normal sensation suddenly feels suspicious. Your brain goes, well, that feels different. Guess we're dying. It spreads because fear is efficient. If everyone around you is screaming that something is terribly wrong with their body, your brain doesn't want to be the idiot who ignores it. Evolution favors paranoia. Better to panic over nothing than to miss a real threat. Unfortunately, your genitals get dragged into the group chat. What makes Koro so unsettling is that reassurance doesn't work. Doctors can show scans, measurements, anatomy diagrams, doesn't matter. Anxiety doesn't speak logic. It speaks sensation. And sensation always feels real. The epidemic only ends when collective fear burns itself out, like a fire that runs out of oxygen. Basically, your brain can convince you your own body is betraying you, and if enough people believe it at once, reality doesn't stand a chance. Number 7. The June Bug Delusion. It's 1962 again because apparently that year was just emotionally unstable. This time we're in a textile factory in the United States. A worker feels a sharp sting on her arm and becomes convinced she's been bitten by an invisible bug. She develops dizziness, nausea, and a rash. Completely reasonable reaction, except there was no bug. Then other workers start feeling it too. Stinging sensations, headaches, vomiting. Some claimed they saw a strange insect flying around. Health inspectors were called. Entomologists were summoned. The building was searched top to bottom. You know what they found? Nothing. No toxic fumes. No rogue insect species. No chemical leaks. Just a factory full of people absolutely certain they'd been attacked by something microscopic and malicious. Eventually, over 60 workers reported symptoms. The factory temporarily shut down because, understandably, morale was in the basement. The leading explanation? Mass psychogenic illness again. The factory conditions were stressful. Production pressure was high. Rumors spread like wildfire. Once the first person attributed her symptoms to a mysterious bug, the story created a template. And your brain loves templates. If someone else feels a sting, and you're already anxious, suddenly every itch becomes suspicious. Here's the thing about your nervous system, it's incredibly suggestible. If you expect a sensation, you're more likely to perceive it. The placebo effect gets all the glory, but the nocebo effect, where belief causes harm, is just as powerful. If your brain believes you've been exposed to danger, it can manufacture symptoms to match the story. And because humans are social creatures, we co-author our fears. One person says, I feel dizzy. Another says, me too. Suddenly it's not just a headache, it's an epidemic. Your body can literally follow the script your environment hands it. In the end, the June bug never materialized. But the stress? The fear? The symptoms? Completely real. Which is somehow more unsettling. Because it means your brain doesn't need a monster under the bed. It can build one out of office gossip. Basically, anxiety with a good PR campaign can shut down a factory. Number 6. The Tanganyika fainting epidemic. Now imagine being in a classroom when one student suddenly faints. The teacher rushes over. Chaos. Concern. And then another student drops. Then another. Within days, dozens of students are collapsing like emotional dominoes. This happened in Tanganyika, modern-day Tanzania, in the 1960s. Schools had to close because students kept fainting, crying uncontrollably, screaming, or reporting breathing problems. Entire classrooms were overtaken by what looked like a mysterious illness. Except doctors couldn't find anything physically wrong. No toxins. No infections. No neurological disorders. Just a pattern of symptoms spreading primarily among young girls in boarding schools. Sound familiar? It should. We're back in the territory of stress and social contagion. These students were navigating intense academic pressure and massive cultural change. The country had recently gained independence. Expectations were high. Resources were limited. And emotional expression wasn't exactly encouraged in structured school settings. So the stress found another outlet. Fainting is fascinating because it's dramatic. It immediately demands attention. Your body essentially says, "We are shutting down until someone addresses this situation." It's the nervous system's version of pulling the emergency brake. Once one student fainted, the event itself became a stressor. Everyone else became hyper-aware of their own bodies. Heartbeat feels faster? That must be the start. A little lightheaded? And boom, down you go. The brain is incredibly good at convincing you something catastrophic is about to happen, especially when it has a front-row seat to someone else's collapse. The epidemic moved from school to school, sometimes following students who transferred. It wasn't contagious in the biological sense. It was contagious in the psychological sense. Fear jumped between people like Wi-Fi. Eventually, the episodes faded without a medical breakthrough. No vaccine. No pill. Just time and reduced stress. It's unsettling because it proves that your body can short-circuit in response to invisible pressure. Basically, your nervous system can stage a blackout protest when it feels unheard. Number 5. The Monkey Man Panic. Fast forward to 2001 in Delhi. People start reporting attacks from a mysterious creature known as the Monkey Man. Witnesses describe a hairy, metal-clawed, monkey-like humanoid leaping between rooftops and assaulting residents at night. Panic spreads. Police are deployed. Sketches are drawn. The city spirals. The problem? Nobody ever caught it. No confirmed evidence. No clear photographs. Just hundreds of terrified people absolutely certain a rooftop ninja monkey was out for blood. Hospitals filled with people who had fallen while fleeing. Some injuries were real, broken bones, concussions, but they were caused by panic, not claws. Rumors spread faster than facts. Every shadow became suspicious. Every rooftop noise turned into proof. Urban environments are perfect incubators for fear. High population density, constant noise, sleep deprivation, and media amplification create a psychological pressure cooker. When a bizarre story enters that environment, your brain tries to complete the picture. It fills in gaps. It embellishes. It confirms what it expects to see. Add cultural folklore about supernatural creatures, and suddenly the brain's pattern recognition system goes into overdrive. Humans evolved to detect threats quickly. Better to mistake a shadow for a predator than a predator for a shadow. But in a modern city, that wiring sometimes invents the predator entirely. The Monkey Man was likely a mix of hysteria, misinterpretation, and possibly a few opportunistic pranksters. But the fear was real enough to cause injuries and citywide panic. What's wild is how quickly a narrative can become tangible. Once people share similar descriptions, the creature gains detail. It becomes sharper, more real. Your brain starts running simulations every time you hear a noise at night. Eventually, the sightings dwindled. The Monkey Man vanished as mysteriously as he appeared. No capture. No corpse. Just a city collectively deciding it had better things to worry about. Basically, your brain can turn urban legends into cardio workouts. Number 4. The Seattle Windshield Pitting Panic. In 1954, residents of Seattle woke up one day and noticed something deeply disturbing. Their car windshields had tiny pits and scratches on them. Naturally, the only logical conclusion was radioactive fallout from nuclear testing. Or cosmic rays. Or enemy sabotage. Because when your windshield has a chip, obviously it's the apocalypse. Within days, reports exploded. Hundreds of people claimed new pitting on their glass. Police were flooded with complaints. The mayor called in scientists. Radiation levels were tested. The Air Force got involved. Because nothing says calm and rational like deploying federal resources over slightly ugly windows. Here's the twist. Investigators found that most of the damage wasn't new. The pits had likely been there for years, caused by normal road debris, gravel, and weathering. But once the story spread, people started examining their windshields like conspiracy theorists analyzing a blurry UFO photo. And suddenly they saw everything. This is called confirmation bias, your brain's favorite hobby. Once you believe something is happening, your perception rearranges reality to match it. That tiny speck you ignored for months? Now it's evidence. The scratch you never noticed? A sign of atmospheric doom. Add Cold War paranoia to the mix, an era where nuclear anxiety was basically ambient background noise, and you've got a population primed for threat detection. The human brain evolved to scan for danger constantly. In uncertain times, that scanning system gets hypersensitive. The panic faded almost as quickly as it started. No radiation. No sabotage. Just normal wear and tear on glass plus a city collectively spiraling. The eerie part is how easily attention can rewrite memory. People were genuinely convinced the pits were new. But memory isn't a hard drive, it's a live editing document. When fear enters the chat, it starts making revisions. Basically, your brain can turn a dusty windshield into a national emergency. Number 3. The Twitching Nuns. In the Middle Ages, several convents across Europe reported something unsettling. Nuns began twitching uncontrollably. Some meowed like cats. Others barked, screamed, or experienced convulsions. In one case, a group of nuns reportedly started biting each other. Not exactly the serene, candlelit monastery vibe you'd expect. Religious authorities initially blamed demonic possession, because of course they did. When in doubt, blame the supernatural. Exorcisms were performed. Prayers intensified. The behavior sometimes stopped, then flared up elsewhere. Modern historians and psychologists look at these cases through a different lens. Mass psychogenic illness fueled by extreme stress and rigid social environments. Convents at the time were highly controlled spaces. Strict routines. Suppressed emotions. Limited autonomy. For many women, entering a convent wasn't always a personal spiritual calling. It was sometimes a social obligation. That kind of pressure builds. Your body doesn't like being silenced indefinitely. When emotional expression is restricted, it finds loopholes. Twitching, fainting, speaking in strange voices, these can all be manifestations of conversion disorder, where psychological stress converts into physical symptoms. And here's where it gets interesting. Behaviors can spread through imitation, especially in tightly knit communities. Mirror neurons, those brain cells that help you mimic and empathize, can amplify visible symptoms. If one nun starts twitching under intense emotional strain, others, already stressed, may unconsciously mirror it. The result? A convent that looks like it's auditioning for a medieval horror film. Once external stressors changed or the social dynamic shifted, many of these outbreaks subsided. No demons required. Just human nervous systems reaching their breaking point. Basically, when repression gets too strong, your body may decide to start meowing. Number 2. The Salem Afflicted Girls. 1692, Salem, Massachusetts. A group of young girls begin experiencing violent fits. They scream, contort, throw objects, and claim they're being tormented by invisible forces. The town does what any rational 17th century Puritan community would do: accuse people of witchcraft and start executing them. Now, whether you interpret this as religious hysteria, political chaos, ergot poisoning, or deliberate manipulation, one thing is undeniable: the symptoms spread socially. The afflicted girls' behavior was theatrical and intense. Convulsions, strange vocalizations, sensitivity to invisible stimuli. And as accusations gained power, more girls began exhibiting similar symptoms. Think about the social context. Strict religious rules. Fear of sin. Limited outlets for emotion or autonomy, especially for young girls. Then suddenly, through these fits, they gained attention, authority, and influence. Adults listened. Judges responded. Entire trials were shaped by their reactions. Your brain is deeply influenced by reinforcement. When a behavior leads to attention or power, even unconsciously, it strengthens. Add a belief system that interprets distress as supernatural attack, and symptoms can escalate rapidly. Some historians suggest the girls were faking. Others believe they were genuinely experiencing psychological distress. The truth may be messy and mixed. But what's clear is that once the narrative of witchcraft took hold, every twitch became evidence. Fear became law. Perception became prosecution. Eventually, the hysteria collapsed under its own weight. Apologies were issued years later. But the damage was permanent. Basically, when belief overrides evidence, reality doesn't stand a chance. Number 1. The mysterious sleeping sickness. Imagine going to bed one night and simply not waking up properly. Not dead. Not in a coma. Just stuck in this eerie in-between state where your brain refuses to function like it used to. You're drowsy all the time. You drift in and out of awareness. Your personality shifts. Some people become almost statue-like. Others develop bizarre, impulsive behaviors years later. It sounds fictional. It wasn't. Around 1916 to the late 1920s, a strange illness called encephalitis lethargica swept across the globe. Millions were affected. Patients experienced overwhelming sleepiness, movement disorders, psychiatric symptoms, hallucinations, and long-term neurological damage. Then, almost as mysteriously as it arrived, it vanished. Doctors were baffled. This wasn't standard flu. It wasn't typical encephalitis. It attacked the brain in unpredictable ways. Some patients would freeze in place for hours, like their internal pause button got stuck. Others would recover, only to develop Parkinson-like symptoms years later. Neurologist Oliver Sacks famously treated surviving patients decades later with L-Dopa, temporarily waking some of them from their frozen states. For a brief moment, they re-entered the world. Then many slipped back. It was like watching someone phase in and out of reality. To this day, the exact cause remains uncertain. Some researchers suspect a viral trigger. Others think it was an autoimmune response, your immune system misidentifying your own brain as the enemy. There's debate about whether it was connected to the 1918 influenza pandemic or something entirely separate. What makes this epidemic so unsettling is that it wasn't purely psychological. It was biological, but still unexplained. A global neurological event that rewired people's brains and then quietly exited history. Your brain is not just your personality. It's your movement, your impulse control, your wakefulness, your sense of self. When something microscopic alters that circuitry, you don't just get sick. You become someone else. And the most chilling part? We still don't fully know what caused it. It simply appeared, reshaped millions of lives, and disappeared without leaving a neat scientific bow on top. Basically, sometimes the epidemic isn't hysteria. Sometimes it's your brain itself being hacked by something we still can't name. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.